They said I didn't feel enough. She said I couldn't love the way stories are supposed to feel, like storms and sunsets, like songs written in blood. She told me I was practical, logical, restrained. But she never saw the fire I never spoke of. I didn't argue. I let her go. Let them all go. Because sometimes you have to lose the audience before you find your voice. I wrote in silence. I bled on pages no one read. I buried lines that could have saved us both. And one ordinary Tuesday, she picked up my novel in a bookstore, flipped a page, and wept. My name is Eli Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. And this is how I found closure between shelves of stories. I was supposed to become someone with a plan. That's what they all said growing up. My dad, Russell Carter, worked in construction for 30 years and didn't miss a day unless he was hospitalized. My mom, Susan, taught third grade for 2 decades and believed in neatly written homework, thank you notes, and always doing the reasonable thing. So naturally, they believed I'd become a mechanical engineer like Uncle John. Maybe open my own firm someday. Have a family by 28. Get a nice house in the suburbs. Coach Little League on Saturdays, grill on Sundays. And I tried. God, I really did. I was good at math. Good at following instructions. Good at saying the right thing in the right tone. I went to UT Austin and majored in engineering. I got an internship right after my sophomore year and even landed a junior position before I graduated. To the world, I was a success story in motion. To my parents, I was our Eli, the stable one. But inside, I was freezing. I used to write poetry in high school. Quiet, experimental stuff. Notebooks full of metaphors I never showed anyone. I stopped when a kid in my calculus class found one of them and laughed. Carter, I didn't know you were a romantic, he sneered. I told him it was just lyrics. He didn't believe me. Neither did I. So I buried the pen. Chased the future that everyone else clapped for. And then I met Lauren Avery. She was a marketing assistant at the tech firm where I worked. Brilliant. Warm. The kind of woman who asked questions no one else thought to ask. We started talking in the break room one afternoon. She noticed the book I was reading, East of Eden, and we bonded over Steinbeck and black coffee. She had a laugh that disarmed people. A way of speaking that made every conversation feel like a secret just between the two of you. We started dating quietly. She was the first person I opened up to in years. We'd lie on her living room floor and talk about love like it was a religion. She told me about her parents' divorce. I told her about the day I stopped writing. She used to say, "You feel things too hard, you just hide it too well." But months passed and something shifted. She became distant, less curious. I could feel her detaching like a boat slowly untethering from shore. One night, after dinner, she sat across from me with this look, half pity, half frustration. "Eli," she said, "I need more." More what? Emotion. Passion. Romance. I don't know. You're good. You're safe. But sometimes it's like dating a closed book. I wanted to tell her that I was a book. That there were pages inside me inked with heartbreak and longing and words I was too afraid to say aloud. But instead, I just stared at her. Silent. Numb. "I just don't think you know how to feel it," she said. "You don't let anything move you." That's when she left. No dramatic exit. No screaming. Just a quiet goodbye and a click of the door behind her. For weeks, I replayed that line. You don't let anything move you. And worse, maybe she was right. My parents didn't know how to react. I told them she moved away for work. They didn't ask for details. Just said, well, better now than later, right? And some things just don't work out. But it wasn't the breakup that broke me. It was the realization that I had become invisible even to the people I loved most. In meetings, I nodded when I wanted to speak. At parties, I laughed when I wanted to leave. I became a ghost in my own life, functional, polite, unremarkable. They didn't notice the sleepless nights, the skipped meals, the way my chest tightened when I walked past bookstores. I wanted to feel something again. Anything. So one night, 2 weeks before my 30th birthday, I sat at my desk and opened a blank Google Doc. It was 11:43 p.m. I still remember the time. No plan. No title. Just one sentence that had been sitting in my throat since she walked away. He wrote her letters in his head every morning but never mailed a single one. I didn't stop typing for 5 hours. When the sun came up, I didn't feel tired. I felt like I had returned to the surface after years underwater. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not even my therapist. This was mine. Every night after work, I came home, made tea, and wrote. Some nights it was 20 pages. Others just 3 lines. But for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving, I was creating. And it didn't matter that no one knew. No one asked where I went after 6 p.m. No one noticed when I turned down invitations or skipped happy hour. No one remembered that I once dreamed of telling stories. I was starting over, but no one noticed. And honestly, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. There's something liberating about doing something just for yourself. No applause, no expectations, no one watching. After months of writing in secret, my apartment started to transform. The space once designed for efficiency now looked like a hurricane of post-it notes, coffee mugs, and scattered drafts. My dining table became a desk. My bookshelf grew heavier. And my evenings, once filled with scrolling and Netflix, became sacred. The story I was writing wasn't just a novel. It was a resurrection. Every character was a mirror. Every paragraph a pulse. I named the protagonist Julian because I always liked names that sounded soft but carried weight. Julian was a florist who couldn't say what he felt, so he made bouquets that spoke for him. He designed arrangements for funerals, weddings, first dates, final goodbyes, and each one was his secret way of saying things he couldn't out loud. It was fiction, but it was me. Writing him gave me permission to be what I never allowed myself to be in real life: emotional, messy, romantic. I still went to work, still responded to emails, still met quarterly goals. But those things became the background. The real me was hidden between double-spaced lines in Google Docs. And then came Miriam. She was an older woman I met at this little cafe downtown. Not a love interest. Just a moment. I was editing Chapter 9 at a corner table one Saturday morning, headphones in, my laptop glowing with highlighted notes and caffeine-stained commentary. She shuffled in with a tote bag full of books, her glasses sliding down her nose, looking utterly lost in thought. She sat across from me, not at my table but in my line of sight, and struggled to connect her tablet to the cafe's Wi-Fi. After 10 minutes of muttering under her breath, she caught my eye and said, "This machine hates me." I smiled, pulling off my headphones. "Want help?" She sighed dramatically. "Unless you speak ancient alien technology." "Probably not." I walked over. Fixed it in 2 clicks. She looked at me like I'd just performed surgery. "You kids. Wizards, all of you." We chatted a bit. She told me her name was Miriam Stern, 74 years old, retired librarian, widowed. She was trying to FaceTime her grandson in Oregon but couldn't figure out how. I showed her, and when the screen lit up with her grandson's chubby-cheeked face, her eyes welled up. "You brought my baby into my living room," she whispered. Something in me cracked. I'd been so focused on grand gestures and emotional closure that I'd forgotten how powerful small moments could be. We sat for an hour. She told me about her late husband, her reading group, the poetry she used to memorize in her 20s. She recited a Mary Oliver line without blinking. "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" That stayed with me. When I got home that night, I added Miriam into the book, not as a character, but as a presence. A moment Julian would have. A mirror for wisdom. More and more, my story began to take shape not from heartbreak, but from healing. I started noticing things. The sound of trees and wind, the scent of strangers' perfumes, the way light bounced off diner tables at 10 a.m. Writing resensitized me to the world. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. A few months in, I joined a small local writers group that met every second Thursday in the back room of a bookstore called Ink and Oak. We were 6 awkward souls. None of us published. All of us dreamers. I brought in chapter 14 one week. Julian designing a bouquet for a woman whose fiancé had just called off the wedding. I remember finishing the reading, nervous, already bracing for polite applause and vague nods. Instead, one woman, Casey, a middle school teacher, looked at me with glassy eyes and said, "That one hurt. In a good way." Another guy said, "That part where he gives her the bouquet, without saying anything? I've lived that." It wasn't validation from the world, but it was something better, resonance. I still didn't tell my parents I was writing. I didn't want the conversation that would follow. "What's the plan with this? You still working full-time, right? Just a hobby, yeah?"
Yes. No.
Maybe. I wasn't sure where the book was going, but it was taking me somewhere. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel directionless. Some nights I'd read back what I wrote and cry. Not because the writing was good, but because I had finally said something that had been buried for too long. Loneliness, regret, longing, forgiveness, they all found a voice on the page. I printed the first draft on a Tuesday, held it in my hands like something sacred. It was over 300 pages. And it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. No title yet. Just a dedication page that read, "For the one who said I couldn't feel, I finally do." I self-published the novel 6 months later under the title, The Language of Petals. It was quiet,
Subtle.
emotional, just like me. I uploaded it to a couple of indie platforms, Amazon KDP, bookshop.org, even created a little site with a bio and contact page, though I barely knew what I was doing. No launch party. No press release. Just a Tuesday night upload and a long breath out. I posted a link on Reddit under a small writer's thread. Someone messaged me, "Dude, this destroyed me. In the best way." I got 23 downloads that first week. It was more than enough. I didn't expect it to go viral. I just wanted it to exist. But over the next couple of months, something strange happened. A woman in New Mexico shared it in her book club. A guy from Baltimore emailed me to say he gave it to his wife on their anniversary. An independent bookstore in Portland ordered 5 paperback copies. The ripples began. I added an email sign-up to my site, and soon I had a little community, mostly quiet romantics, people who'd loved and lost, people who believed stories could still say the things we're too afraid to voice in real life. We had discussions, shared playlists. I even did a Zoom reading once and 50 people showed up. Some had tears in their eyes. One woman said, "This book made me call my father after 10 years. Another told me, "I didn't know men like Julian existed." I wanted to say they do. We're just quieter about it. My favorite bookstore, Ink and Oak, offered to host a local author shelf. They stocked my book next to names I once idolized. I didn't make money, just enough for a week's groceries now and then, but I made meaning. That bookstore became a sanctuary. I'd walk in sometimes just to see the spine of my novel among the others, just to remind myself it was real. I reached a point where I had over 3,000 downloads. My email list crossed 1,200 subscribers. The average open rate? 76%. Better than most marketing agencies could dream of. I launched a small monthly newsletter. No big branding. No sales funnel. Just letters from me, little musings, writing prompts, reflections. People responded. They thanked me. Some even sent their own poetry back. It was quiet success. Personal.
Deep.
I was building something honest. But then came Thanksgiving. The whole family was together. My parents, my sister Hannah, her husband James, my cousins, even great Aunt Lydia, who only leaves the house when there's stuffing involved. We were sitting around the table after dinner, half eating pie, half scrolling phones. Hannah looked up and asked, "So, Eli, what be you been up to? Still working that tech job?" I nodded.
Yeah.
Still full-time. But I also wrote a book. James laughed, mid-sip of wine. "You? A book?" I smiled.
Yeah.
Fiction. Romance, actually. The room paused for a second too long. Then Aunt Lydia chimed in. "Oh, how quaint. My mom said, 'That's nice, honey. Just don't quit your job over it.'" And then came Dad, teaching old folks to click buttons, Now writing love stories? Real noble work, son. The words weren't cruel, but they cut. I wanted to say, people cry when they read what I wrote. A woman flew across the country just to attend my signing in Chicago. My story changed lives, just not yours. But instead, I said nothing. Just nodded, took another bite of pie, and stared at the empty plate in front of me. To them, I was still the safe one. The good boy who never caused trouble. The one who didn't take risks. Even after everything I'd built, I was still invisible at that table. And yet, a stranger across the world once wrote, "Julian helped me fall back in love with my husband." I started noticing the duality of it all. Online, I was seen, appreciated,
Felt.
at home, I was background noise. It would have hurt more if I hadn't already detached. I stopped looking for validation at that table. Started pouring more into the ones that truly saw me. My community kept growing. Slowly. Organically. I partnered with a nonprofit to run a free creative writing class for veterans. Every Thursday, 6 of us met in the back of a VFW hall and wrote stories about things we never said in real life. One guy wrote about his mother's perfume. Another wrote about a dog he lost in Afghanistan. I wrote about forgiveness. We all cried. Together. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. I added those moments into my next novel. Subtle, fictionalized, but real. Meanwhile, I'd walk into stores and sometimes see the language of petals tucked behind big titles. Just one copy. But still, it was there.
Alive.
Breathing. And yet, my mom still introduced me to her friends as my son, the engineer. She never mentioned the book. Never asked for a signed copy. Never once said, "I'm proud of you." But that was okay. Because for the first time in my life, I was proud of myself. It was a rainy Saturday in late October when everything changed. One of those quiet afternoons where you walk just to feel yourself moving. I was restless. The kind of restless that no screen could fix. I wandered into Eastwood Books, a cozy little shop I hadn't visited in a while. It smelled like cedar and ink, the kind of place where stories stretch their limbs. The bell above the door jingled as I walked in. The clerk behind the counter gave me a nod, and I slipped between shelves like a ghost. No one knew me here. Not really. Sure, my book was on the local author shelf, but I never introduced myself when I dropped off copies. I liked the anonymity. The quiet poetry of being present but unseen. I wandered toward the back, fiction aisle, past the classics, the heartbreakers, the dreamers. And then I stopped. There she was. Lauren. Sitting cross-legged on the floor. Rain-damp hair, oversized sweater, a paper cup of coffee beside her. She didn't see me. She was too immersed. Eyes darting across the page. Mouth moving with the words. And in her hands, my book. I froze. She had the second edition. The one with the revised cover and the new epilogue. I hadn't told anyone I'd reworked it. My breath caught somewhere between shock and ache. She turned the page, smiled slightly, and whispered, almost too softly, one of the lines Julian says in chapter 17. I wasn't trying to win her back. I was just trying to tell her what I never could when she was still looking at me. I felt time fold in on itself. This woman once told me I wasn't romantic, that I didn't know how to feel. And now here she was, lost in the very words I wrote about loving her in silence. I stepped back, heart pounding. I didn't want confrontation. I just wanted, I don't know what I wanted. She stood up slowly, still reading, still mouthing the dialogue. Then she walked to the register. The clerk, a girl named Tina, asked her how she liked the book. I haven't finished, Lauren said. But it's beautiful. Like Heartbreak and Hope Had a Baby. Tina smiled. Yeah, that one's been getting some attention lately. Local author. Guy named Eli Carter. Super quiet. He drops off copies himself. Lauren blinked. Wait. Eli?
Yeah.
Know him? She didn't answer right away. Just looked down at the cover again, fingers tracing the title. I dated someone named Eli, she finally said, voice softer now. But he wasn't like this. Tina shrugged. Maybe he is now. Lauren laughed. a strange, nervous sound. No, he was always like this. I just didn't know where to look. She turned and saw me. For a moment, the world narrowed. Rain against windows. Pages turning. The hum of the coffee machine. Her eyes, wide, stunned, searching my face like it had changed. Eli, she said, almost afraid to say it. I nodded. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't know, she began, but I raised a hand gently. You weren't supposed to, I said. She looked down at the book again, then back at me. You wrote this. I lived it. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Electric. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be, I said. You gave me the ending I needed. She smiled. It was a different smile now. Not pity. Not regret. Just recognition. She held up the book. It's beautiful. Painful, but beautiful. So was the lesson, I replied. She paid for the book. Left quietly. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. That story was never meant to win her back. It was meant to speak for the version of me that never got to explain himself. And now it had. Not because I demanded attention, but because the truth walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. I never expected her to show up at my book signing. The store was small, tucked in the corner of a plaza in Austin, sunlight slanting through the windows like a spotlight. My novel, a map back to her, stood upright beside me on the table, copies slowly disappearing one by one. The line of readers had just started thinning out when I saw her. Lena. She wasn't dressed up, just a soft cream sweater and her hair tied back, like she had made the decision on impulse. Maybe fate whispered to her again. Maybe the story did. She approached slowly, her eyes scanning the cover, then meeting mine. I read it, she said quietly.
Twice.
I couldn't speak at first. I was wrong, she continued. You didn't just feel. You lived every emotion we shared, and buried them in pages I never knew were meant for me. I smiled softly. Sometimes words say what mouths can't. She touched the novel. Is there a sequel? There might be, I said, my heart pounding. If the muse returns. She laughed gently, and for the first time in years, it wasn't awkward between us. Just human. Honest. She left without promises. But I saw something different in her eyes. Something open, perhaps a beginning. Not all stories need a happy ending, but some deserve a second chapter. And this time, I'll be ready to write it, line by line.